Okay. Well, good morning again, and welcome to the Social Equity Program's Pitch Perfect Training Summit. My name is Dr. Imani Brown, and I'm the Social Equity Program Director for the Department of Cannabis Regulation. Now, for those of you that may have missed the last training session, this is the second installment in our series of training sessions, as we focus today on creating and improving your business pitch decks and securing funding for your businesses, which is so important, and everybody's really interested in that. We're really excited to have Jake Kuzarek as our subject matter expert. Thank you so much, Jake, who will be sharing information that we hope will really help your businesses and develop sustainability. Jake Kuzarek is a Los Angeles-based investor, consultant, writer for the publications such as Buddhist and High Magazine. He is a mentor and advisor within the cannabis industry, currently leading sales for New Frontier Data. As a member of NCIA's Cannabis Manufacturing Committee, he regularly hosts webinars on various topics focused on the intersection of product and policy. Jake has been a supporter and a subject matter expert on our webinars, and he's attended and been a facilitator for many other events that we have produced. With over 4 years of experience serving as managing director of Founders Institute's San Francisco's Accelerator Program, he has a deep experience base helping startups to fundraise and scale. Our hope for today is that you walk away from this training with a deeper understanding and more knowledge and insight that will help you grow your business. And without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to our summit facilitator, Jake Kuzarek.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. It is so good to see everybody here today on this beautiful Thursday in Los Angeles. Without further ado, we're happy to break into things. And before we begin, one thing that Dr. Brown always says is, I can teach you policy, but I can't teach you integrity and work ethic. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm here to teach you about fundraising, but at the end of the day, the keys to success, they're in your own pocket. Going out there, putting yourself forward, hustling is how you can land these checks, is how you can survive in this business or any business. So always remember that. Keep your values first, never compromise. And I'm going to teach you some actionable feedback today to make your pitch, your verbal, your deck as strong as possible. Now, one other housekeeping item. Cassie, I'd love to have you raise your hand real quick. Okay, everybody see Cassie? So if you have a pitch deck, you have anything today that you want me to rip apart live on stage, I will go through it, leave a live due diligence session, show what's working on your deck, what needs improvement. This is gonna be a great exercise. Please send your deck over to Cassie. Just walk over there and tell her, what's the best email. But I'd love to get some real world LA Cannabis Company decks. I will be going over 4 other presentations to point out what's working and what's not. All right, so without further ado, a little bit of background on myself. I was formerly at the ArcView Group, which was the largest and oldest cannabis investor network, which was really valuable for building connections and, more importantly, finding out what these investors look for. I think in 1 year at ArcView, I reviewed over 1,500 pitch decks. In my career, it's got to be well over 5,000 or so. This slide here I like to show in a lot of my talks because it's a good example of what not to do. So on a slide like this, in a typical pitch deck, there's some easy things that you can look out for. One of them here is having too many different fonts, too many different styles. One thing I say is if you highlight everything, you highlight nothing. So here you have it bolded, you have this underlined, you have this italicized, you have this big heading text, you got the big logo. See, to me, this doesn't feel branded, it doesn't feel cohesive. So, what's key before you start building your pitch deck is to understand what needs to go into it. We're gonna run through that today. We are going to do the Mad Libs exercise, if you haven't already. To start building the pieces of a deck. And of course, we are going to talk through things like building a style guide, because at the end of the day, having the style guide, having a designer build your logo, build your other assets beforehand, before you start on your pitch deck, goes a long way to make this thing feel professional. Because at the end of the day, investors, they're easily seduced, and sometimes they're only looking at a slide for 6 seconds a piece. You want to make sure you're stopping them in your tracks, and a good way to do that is have something that's been attractively branded. I do work with a lot of different organizations. I'm an investor, an angel investor in Wonder, the beverage company. I'm also an LP in another fund in the space, and have done a lot of mentoring and advising, probably for over a dozen companies. So this is an absolutely key slide, one that everyone should have in their back pockets. And this was pulled from SlideBean. SlideBean.com is a great resource that aggregates different pitch decks from different tech companies and other industries, showing you what has worked in the past, what's been successful, what pitch deck did Airbnb use to raise their initial millions. You can review it, and more importantly, you can see the format that investors look for. So 500 startups, one of the leading accelerators, Guy Kawasaki, leading investor who's now in the cannabis space. He was at Benzinga Chicago with me earlier this week, one of his main guys saying Guy Kawasaki is now interested in cannabis. That's a really powerful signal showing that we are seeing tech investors that historically haven't touched this space getting excited about it. Sequoia, a couple other different formats here, but 10 slides, 11 slides, 15 slides, that's one common element. You want to keep your pitch deck short and sweet. It is entirely about being concise because at the end of the day, most of these investors, their entire afternoon is looking at dozens of pitch decks. All of it kind of runs together. They've seen everything before, so you really want to keep it concise. You don't need to overload information on the page. Less is more. But there are some key elements of every deck. You want to start with your problem, explain what you're trying to solve, go immediately into your solution. Then market validation, that's kind of the why now. Let's get into some actual examples of your product, of your service. Let's show some real world, screens of it. And then let's get into the market size. Investors want to see more than anything that you're a good steward of capital, which means that if they're going to give you their investment, they need to have that confidence that you're not going to blow it. So it's this deck, the pitch deck is your way to express trust in you, but also your action plan, and also the market opportunity. So market validation, market size is a great way of saying, look, this is a $1 billion market we're headed at. Our addressable portion of it here in LA is, a tenth of it. The business model, for most of you, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's one thing that will throw off a lot of investors is if you're trying to introduce some very complex new revenue model, when at the end of the day, we already know how cultivators, how dispensaries, how brands can make money in this space. Now, there is room for fun, creative ideas like loyalty programs that haven't yet seen a ton of adoption, but we'll get into that later. Now, underlying magic is one of my favorite. Every pitch deck, you really want to think about hammer drop moments. What is something that I can put out there that's going to stop an investor in their tracks on the slide and get them to think, get them to pause, get them to think, wow, this guy already, or this founder already has some significant traction. And that's where you can do it, is underlying magic, is really hitting them with maybe a key hire, a key partnership, a key advantage you have over someone else with the same idea. Competition, of course, I'll show some examples, but a very simple grid outlining what you do better than your competitors is what's needed. And of course, you can go a little bit deeper into your go-to-market strategy, your marketing plan, your team slide, absolutely critical. That's an obvious one. Any key board members or advisors, traction and milestones, that's where your glamour metrics can really shine. Like if you're, cost per customer acquisition is super low, that can be something that stands out. Your lifetime value of a customer, the average cart size at your retail, if it's notably high, can be something that really stands out as part of your traction or milestone slide. And of course, I like to include press, other testimonials. Cannabis is so human-centric. At the end of the day, if I open a pitch deck that's in cannabis and I don't see a human face on it, I'm going to be turned off. I want to feel that sense of community. I want to feel that this operator understands that this isn't just another product like, shoes. This is something that has real medicinal value and community building value. And of course, you really always need to close out with your ask. Your ask does not need to be I am raising $500,000. We are 20% of the way there. Here's our investors. An ask can be nebulous, especially depending on the stage that you're at. I know a lot of founders that if they're pitching a group, they could be just as valuable of a win as landing interest in investing in their round could be landing a key new advisor, a key new board member, a key new partner that helps them get to be investable. So without further ado, let's move on here. Here's a little bit about some tips and tricks. Confidence is one thing I do want to speak about, and we'll get to this a little bit later as well. But I'll tell you, I'll tell you a personal story. We were fundraising at a startup company I was at 10 years ago. We went into this business meeting. My co-founder decided he wanted to project that we were cool, we were Silicon Valley, we were hip. He showed up in a pink t-shirt, jeans, and sandals. The investor was wearing a navy blazer. He had made his money in real estate. And within about 5 minutes, we knew that meeting was going to fail. That investor didn't feel that we came in there confident, didn't feel that we came in there practiced and professional. He came in there looking like, a bunch of amateurs. So the reason I bring that up is you need to understand about who you're pitching just as much as they need to understand about you. Before you go into any meeting with any investor, any potential partner, don't just go to their LinkedIn. Don't just go to their firm's website, but actually start digging into some of these companies. See what excites them. See what press releases that these firms might be putting out and why they're passionate about certain sectors of the market. Why is retail in the Midwest what Poseidon cares about right now? Know the answers to these questions before you go in, because you can tailor your pitch to acknowledge those key points they're looking to hear. Now, one thing I never want to forget is investors are people too, believe it or not. They don't respond to you coming in hot right out of the gate, pitching them, cornering them, saying, hey, let me run through your deck real quick. No, build a relationship, build trust. Make jokes, talk about what's going on in the world, what's on Netflix before you go into a meeting. Because at the end of the day, any investor that you're working with, at bare minimum, you're gonna be tied together for 5 years. If you go public, the horizon is something like 8 years. So this is somebody you're gonna be in bed with, you're gonna be sending Christmas cards with. It's somebody that you're really gonna want to like as a person and understand the value they can bring to the table, because not every investor brings the same resources. A lot of them are looking to just give you capital. A lot of them are looking to be featured at the very top of the press release. A lot of them can bring a huge network of partners that you can work with directly to help scale your business. But everyone is going to be different. It doesn't just take you asking them about how they do it different. It takes you doing some research. Talk to companies that have received a check from that investor before. Find out what made or break that conversation for them. And because I'll tell you, the first step for many big firms like Andreessen Horowitz in getting one of their checks is to get in, is to either find your way into a conversation by talking to one of the companies they've invested in and getting the intro that way, or talking to one of the associates or partners at the firm directly and getting the intro that way. They need to see that you as a founder can be scrappy enough to get someone to say, hey, this guy's worth looking at. Trying to go in cold, especially with the top tier firms, doesn't go nearly as well. It might work with high net worth individuals and family offices, angel investors, especially if you have some connective tissue to them already. It can be easier to go in a little bit cold. But with the big top tier firms, that's what they're judging you on. And you better believe that before you get in front of one of those big investors, they have not only looked at your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your company's website, your deck, but they've shared it with everybody else at the firm. And they usually say, hey, anyone want to sit in on this one? They'll post it to their Slack. They'll have people just weigh in with comments. Do you know this guy? Do you like this guy? Yeah, it's surprising, but this all goes on. They're doing just as much research on you before you do it on them. So this brings us to our first exercise. This is one of my favorite starting points. We use this at Founder Institute as literally step one of every single cohort, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to build an effective pitch deck if you don't solve these basic questions first. Who, what, where, when, why, and why now? So a better way of putting it, of course, is name of your company. What are you developing? what problem are you solving, what audience is this for, and what's your secret sauce. If you get these elements together, that's enough to build an elevator pitch. That's enough to walk into an investor event and be able to speak about your company in a way that might be appealing to them. You know, a short and sweet delivery on why you add value, why you stand out from your competitors. So I'd invite everyone to actually try this right now. I'll take a brief pause and put the mic down. I'm happy to walk aisle by aisle if anybody is struggling with it. But let's do this together. So I'd like to have everyone grab a pen and just start filling out what's in front of you with your name of company, your defined offering, your audience, your problem, your secret sauce. So let's break into it. I think this should only take 3 to 5 minutes, and I'll walk around while we do it. And I'll keep the mic if any questions pop up. So one question here is on how do you, if you're introducing something like, you know, we have the best cultivar, we have the best brand with the best weed, how do you get yourself to stand off among obviously a bunch of other founders who are making the exact same claim, saying, oh, our stuff is the most premium. This is a great example. You know, how does a retailer stand out when they're offering a product selection that's similar to the retailer down the street? There's always going to be issues. I think the one old adage is everything has been done before. The way you can kill an investor pitch right off the bat is to go in and say, this is the only X that's ever existed. I'm the first one to ever do this. Because their response is going to be bullshit, I saw it last week. You know? So it does take some time for you to really stew on what is your underlying magic. For instance, if somebody said, we have the best cultivar, why is it the best? Does it mean, is it the highest THC percentage? Is it old school genetics that haven't been rebooted in decades? Is it a weird terpenes that, you know, we don't often see? Is it the use of added terpenes, you know, to create more of a smooth experience? There's always going to be ways that you can carve out. And if you're struggling to figure out those, you know, I'm happy to sit down with you after, because you might not realize you already have that to the table. It could be, you know, hey, I'm a retailer, but we have, you know, bud tenders who are more highly trained than anyone else in the state. They're going to sit down next to you, everyone who walks in, and consult them on what's the best product for them. There's always going to be those angles. And at the end of the day, sometimes it might be as simple as discount, you know, off the charts. You know, those guys are, you know, say what you will about their team, but what I will say is, you know, their discount strategy has made them incredibly popular. I mean, the fact is, you know, competing on price is a race to the bottom, but for many investors, if you can show that you're taking that approach, but justify that you can actually pull it off, you know, then it's something that might really appeal to them. Everything comes down to the evidence you can put behind the claims you're making. If you're going to say you're going to be the best at something, you say you're going to be the largest at something, you have to be ready to put that number in front of someone. You know, the numbers, the glamour metrics, the big percentages, the big, you know, that's what's going to stop investors in their tracks. So the defined audience one is always, you know, not crazy important. I mean, at the end of the day, most of it's going to be Los Angeles residents. If you can break down deeper demographic information from there to paint kind of a picture of who your target audience is, who your ICP is, your ideal customer persona or profile, you know, that's obviously ideal. But look, this goes back to not reinventing the wheel. Everyone knows that if you build a retail in LA, who's going to come in? So, you feel good? Ready to go? I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it with me. All right. I'll just stand right here. I mean, I don't need to be on stage, whatever. Company is Phyto Group LLC. Great name. I like it. Is Phyto Group LLC, I imagine that's the corporate name. Do you have like a DBA? Yeah. I mean, even if it's just like Phyto Group without the LLC, I think is fine. Yeah. I mean, Phylos is already well known, like, but I think Phyto could be good. Is developing product / a brand. Awesome. That's exactly what we're looking for here. That is consistent old school genetics. Oh my God, you're speaking my language. I love this space. We should definitely talk after. I have some connections. To help legacy smokers, male 30 and up. That's kind of the ICP. Solving the problem, getting a consistent product always with what you're going to get. Yeah, definitely. That is a huge problem in the industry, and expert with own strain. Yeah, so I think you absolutely nailed this exercise. This is really what we're looking for kind of the V1 before this is adapted into a deck, because you can walk into, like I said, any room and come up to an investor and say, look, we're launching a brand focused on legacy genetics. Naturally, it's going to resonate with a little bit of an older audience that are used to these strains. And yeah, I mean, we're going to launch it in LA. That's the only thing that's missing here, is a little bit more specificity on how it will launch. Is this a brand that you are bringing to market yourself? Are you going to get a license and start cultivating these genetics yourself? Are you using a co-manufacturer? Are you going into My Green Network and having those guys hold the license and co-man on your behalf? All of these can be key. The other side of this is it B2B or B2C? Are you targeting, you're going to bring these strains to market, heavily direct to consumer, you're going to try to get these in other retailers, or are you going to be the compound genetics who's going to, talk to a cookies and start doing their genetics, So defining B2B versus B2C, targeting the specific launch market is the only missing pieces here, but otherwise this is exactly what we're looking for. Round of applause. Great job. Anyone else want to do theirs? See, it's quick and painless. It's not that bad. All right, here we go. All right. Let's see. I might have to help you. It's Up on Wave? Up on Wow, LLC. This is a direct-to-consumer marketplace. Awesome, great idea. We've seen this validated in a bunch of other industries before. Haven't seen it working as well in cannabis, which is a huge market opportunity. To help consumers in Los Angeles find quality products made with our bespoke original genetics. Awesome, 2 genetics companies in the house tonight. So to me, this is great. It looks like the marketplace is all going to feature products with your genetics. So that one definitely begs a little bit of a question: is how is that possible? Are these all going to be? Do you have a co-manufacturer, and if they work with you, they're using your genetics? Aeroponics, it's 96, right? Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And look, investors. Yeah. Massive. See, that right there is secret sauce. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It's huge. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Investors are going to know of Jack Herrera for the most part. They're going to know of a history, a 30-year history of legacy genetics, of success in the space. These are what the points that need to be emphasized. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing is, an investor pitch designed for a VC was going to be different. Designed for an angel investor or friends and family. It really comes down to understanding what questions they would ask before you start talking to them, and then working backwards to fill that in. Somebody, especially if it's a family member who's, been in the scene as well, been in the legacy space. I mean, yeah, I'd lean hard into the hard numbers there. How many unique cultivars you've worked with, obviously what you did specifically with Jack. Like, these are the kind of things that will help you stand out. And a lot of these investors, you don't know this, a lot of them have personal passions and interest in the space, and are thought leaders who might blog on their LinkedIn about their passion for genetics. But you never know till you start throwing out those little bits of dog food to see what they respond to. It's been very watered down. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's been a nightmare. Oh, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, we're definitely going to get in. That's a huge portion of today's topic is how to get to these investors, how to track them down. No, totally fine. No, this is obviously what's on the minds of everyone else in this room is what's the point of learning all of this if there's no one that's going to bite on my pitch? You know, the economy's tough right now. How do I find these rooms where the investors are? And what does an investor look like? Because at the end of the day, you never know who can write that check. You know. Sorry, I think we have another question over here. Oh, sorry. This was perfect. Yeah, just yep. Yep. Quick question. Definitely. Happy to cover that. If there are any direct questions on that, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of predatory investors. I can get into that now if you want. Yeah. So, as I said earlier, there's nothing more important than finding investors you can trust. And the way to do that is to talk to companies they've actually invested in beforehand. If these founders can't easily hop on a call and tell you, oh yeah, they've been a dream to work with, or no, they've been terrible and their lawyers are primarily who we deal with, that's going to be a red flag off the bat. When it comes to, digging a little bit deeper than that, a lot of times there are public records of investments they've made. On websites like Crunchbase and AngelList, you can actually see some of these deals. You can look at the press releases, of course, to see, who was funding a lot of these deals, to get a sense of who's a good actor. The other thing is don't be afraid to use social media, because at the end of the day, this is a small enough industry where, you see people call out bad experiences that they've had, people that have been taken advantage of. There's a group in Northern California that was doing manufacturing primarily of edibles. They ended up finding an investor slash acquirer slash new parent group to tie in with. And for all signals were green. This company had a great reputation. Founders were very trustworthy, but at the end of the day, once the paperwork was dry, she went home for the night. They broke into her facility, took out all the equipment overnight. And so she came back to an empty facility and she's like, I just thought you guys invested in me. And they were like, you should have read your paperwork better. So now she's out of the game after 10 years. That stuff happens. And she's reached a point now where she's sharing about it on social media. And that's something that I hope everybody does that's been burned, to name and shame, to call out the people who are taking advantage of founders. The one thing to understand is a lot of times, we have to look at this through the lens of cannabis compared to other companies or other industries. 90% of startups do not succeed, full stop. 90% of startups will not raise that initial investment. Of the ones that raise that initial investment, 40% will actually reach their next stage of investment. So cannabis, just like tech, just like building a restaurant, the odds of success are always slim. That's what I said at the beginning of this about, your work ethic and integrity is just as important as learning these tips and tricks, because it's a bloodbath out there, The red tape, overtaxation. One of the biggest reasons it hasn't really broken through, and we've seen life sciences investors and similar jumping into the space, is you're exactly right, is due to the red tape. Because at the end of the day, investors need projections they can rely upon. This is why a lot of the earliest companies getting funded during the green rush did not succeed. And a lot of these investment firms are out of capital or out of dry powder because they're spending all of their money keeping these existing companies afloat because they dug themselves into a hole. Case in point, you would have a new market opening up and someone would say, cool, I'm gonna have 100,000 feet of canopy, everything is gonna sell, I'm gonna control 10% of the market. And the investor said, sure, that sounds good. but didn't really understand that, half that crop, might not be viable. They can't even find potential partners to take that inventory. They didn't have the deals lined up beforehand. The money wasn't secured. When you're doing projections, it's very easy to paint a deceiving picture. So at the end of the day, the pendulum swings both ways. It's easy for the cannabis industry's problems are largely self-inflicted. I know, sucks to say, but there's been a lot of people, the MedMens of the world, who got on stage and said, no one else in this room understands it the way I do. I know how to make money. I've made money in all these other industries. You don't even have to care about the plant. At the end of the day, this is a business. Give me your money. And a lot of investors who made their money in real estate and stuff said, hell yeah, these guys have the attitude that I respond to. That's the kind of business I like to do. They're straight shooters. A lot of people were easily seduced by charlatans saying this is going to be, like I said, trillions of dollars in their pocket because they got super greedy. But the really big thing to anchor this and kind of keep in mind here is at the end of the day, not every company in this room, not every company in any industry is trying to be a MedMen, is trying to be a GTI, a Verano, or whatever else. It's perfectly acceptable to build a company, and have it be a passive thing, that you do on the side. You don't need to raise, $10 million to be successful. You can build something off of friends and family money that's profitable, that you can do full time. Everything ties back to what is your measure of success? What are you looking to get out of this? If you're looking to be Steve Jobs, you're taking way bigger risks. You're spending way more money to get there, and it takes an army. If you're trying to build something a lot more digestible, like a brand, there's so many resources out there to do this quickly and easily. So yeah, stop there. Is there anything else on the Mad Libs exercise? I know we've gotten a little bit off track. Okay, great.